بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، أما بعد. Last lesson we took Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So quickly, just to go over the main points regarding them too. Muhammad Khan, tell me the name of Sahih al-Bukhari.
So the full name of Sahih al-Bukhari is Al-Jami' al-Musnad al-Sahih al-Mukhtasar min Umuri Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamihi.
What's the meaning of al-Jami'?
Jami' it means like something comprehensive. So it's not restricted to just fiqh chapters, but it's like goes out of that as well. So it's like God is everything.
How many did we mention?
I think we said eight things. Gathers.
Yeah, so and if you can know all eight, that's good as well. But generally, you just know that it covers all topics: aqidah, akhlaq, adab, fadail, things like that. Now, okay, last question for you. What's the main explanation of Sahih Bukhari?
It's Fathul Bari by Ibn Hajar.
Okay, very good. Right, Amir, got same questions for you about Sahih Muslim. What's the name of Sahih Muslim?
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. The name of Sahih Muslim, المسند الصحيح المختصر من السنن بالنقل العدل عن العدل, I think.
Yeah. Last part, عن رسول
الله
عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Good.
صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Okay. What's the main explanation for Sahih Muslim?
I'm not sure, Sheikh.
Because I know it's a lot. You just need to memorize one. Al-Minhaj by who?
Not Ibn Hibban.
Imam and
Allahu A'lam, Sheikh.
By Imam An-Nawawi.
Subhanallah. Naam, of course. You mentioned.
Naam, by Imam An-Nawawi, rahimahullah. Right. Hamza, tell me a few differences between Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for that. Sahih Bukhari, he had an extra condition.
No.
Sahih Bukhari, he was the one that was gathering that hadith himself, whereas Sahih Muslim, the hadith came to him. Sahih Muslim is more neated.
Say that one again. Say that one again.
Imam Bukhari, he was outside going around getting the hadith himself, whereas with Imam Muslim, the hadith came back to him, or the hadith where it came to him basically.
La, who said that? Where did you get that from?
One of the durus from one of the Asatid.
No, Imam Muslim traveled as well. Traveled to many places. No, he traveled as well. Might not been as much as Bukhari, but he traveled.
I had Imam Muslim more.
Hamza, forget what you've heard from other durus. I don't know if you noticed, but I saw sometimes you mention stuff in the comments and I look over it. Forget what other people have said. Just focus on what we're saying, okay? Now, mention the other differences.
Imam Bukhari gets the main point and then he just moves on, whereas Imam Muslim, he mentions that more than one hadith and it has different narrations, so he gets more precise. Imam Bukhari, sometimes he would mention like a part of a hadith and then and he wouldn't mention everything. For example, he would say in one of the chapters he would say Abu Shafrul Iman, and he would just move on. He wants to basically keep it to do with the chapter heading.
Well, what's that called? Do you know what's that called? I don't think I mentioned it, but do you know what that's called in Arabic? Like him just mentioning part of the hadith and not all of it.
No, never heard.
Taqtir.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no qata'a to cut off, right? So he just cut off the part that's needed.
Okay.
Taqtir al-Bukhari now.
Instead, I'm really behind on the durus. That's why I had no idea there's a difference today, and that's why I was only mentioning what I know. So
No problem, no problem, inshallah. No problem. Okay, class, that's fine, inshallah. Look, alhamdulillah, subhanAllah, look, I don't know why the lessons get so long, subhanAllah. I don't know why they end up being 1.5 hours. What I've just asked you right now is basically the summary of last lesson. يعني. I don't know why it took so long. those that know, I try to keep, especially when we did usul thalatha qad arba', I try to make the lessons short as possible, but I don't know, 40 is just getting, even though I've written so much stuff up, it's getting really long, subhanAllah, qadar Allah ma sha fa'al. I think that might have been put a few people off, as you can see, numbers have gone down as well. Really, it's not a problem, but I don't know why it's so long. Allah musta'an. Right, now obviously that makes it harder to catch up as well. Now, anyways, khair, alhamdulillah. Right, we're moving on now to Sunan Abi Dawud, the fourth Sunan, right? The fourth Sunan, what is a Sunan, right? So last lesson, you start homework. Now, okay, with the homework of difference between Sufyan al-Uyayna and Sufyan al-Thawri, subhanAllah, I actually forgot about it. I actually had a few things written. I don't have it with me. Okay. So look, there's a number of things. What you mentioned is very good. The Sufyan al-Thawri was from Kufa and Ibn Uyayna was from Makkah. So you look at the chain. So the people narrating are from Kufa, then you know Sufyan al-Thawri. And if they're from Makkah, then you know it's Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Ahsant. Likewise, you said they lived at the same time. I think there's a slight difference. I can't remember. One came one level before the other. From what I remember, so slightly before the other. So you can sometimes look at the level as well. That can sometimes help. Also, they had certain people that would narrate from them, or they would narrate from certain teachers who were known. I can't remember the names right now. But obviously, if you see that name, then you know it's the Sufyan and not the other Sufyan. Now, these are just some of the ways of working out. Very good. Ahsantum. No, ahsant. Well, that's one of the main ones, you're right. That's one of the main ones, looking at where they were from. Right, the Sunan, the fourth Sunan, right? There are 4 books which are known as the Sunan, famously. Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Abi Dawud. Abi Dawud, same thing, it's just a grammar rule for those that know. Abi would become mudaf ilayh. And Asma al-Khamsa is mudaf ilayh. That's why it's Abi. But if you don't know that, if you say Sunan Abu Dawud, it's fine as well. Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan al-Tirmidhi. What's more precise to say Jami' al-Tirmidhi, but we can say Sunan as well. It's only mentioned because it popped before. Sunan al-Nasa'i and Sunan Ibn Majah. There are other Sunan as well, al-Darimi, al-Bayhaqi, al-Daraqutni, but the main ones are these 4. What is a Sunan? The Sunan are those books which gather Ahadith al-Ahkam al-Marfu'ah. Right? Ahadith al-Ahkam, Ahkam basically means rulings, and more precisely is referring to fiqhi rulings. And the Marfu'ah, statements of the Prophet, so you won't find statements of the Sahaba or Tabi'in. If you do, then it's like a one-off, very rare, but no, you wouldn't. Ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. In other words, in simple terms, a Sunan is a book ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. Has hadith marfu' upon the chapters of fiqh, right? So they're really good for fiqh issues. So what are one of the best books of if you want the fiqh ahadith, you go to the Sunan. And Bukhari as well, because Bukhari, we talked about the fiqh of Bukhari, if you tarajumih and so on. But from the other angle, Sunan is one of the best books because it focuses more on fiqh. Someone said that Abu Dawud, he said that I've gathered all the hadith that you need in fiqh, basically. I've done isti'ab of them, which we're going to talk about in a second. So the famous As-Sunan al-Arba' means the 4 Sunan. The 4 Sunan. Right? Which are done 4, and then there are others as well which aren't as famous. So we're going to start off with That's how you pronounce it. Not Abi. Sunan Abi Dawud. Darimi. Bayhaqi. Daraqutni. Right. Right, so we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the first one, inshallah. The name of the book, Sunan Abi Dawud, what's the name of it and why he wrote it. The name of the book is Sunan. The name of the book is Sunan, right? And this is something, by the way, none of the scholars have disagreed upon, that the name of his book is As-Sunan. Why have they not disagreed upon the name of his book being As-Sunan? Imam Abu Dawud, rahimahullah, he wrote a letter to the people of Makkah. And it's called Risala to Abi Dawud ila Ahli Makkah. That's how it's printed, the letter of Abu Dawud to the people of Makkah. They asked him about his Sunan. So basically in there, he talked about his Sunan and he talked about his methodology in there. So that's one of the main books if you want to learn about the methodology of Sunan Abi Dawud. You go back to that letter that he wrote. So in regards to the name, there's no doubt that his name is Sunan because he referred to his book as a Sunan. He wrote in this letter, he wrote, "Verily you have asked me to mention the hadith which are in the book As-Sunan. Verily you have asked me to mention the hadith which are in the book As-Sunan." So he referred to his book as As-Sunan. Now, why did he write the book? He didn't really mention why he wrote a book like Bukhari or Muslim did. However, we could say that he wanted to gather, it seems like he wanted to gather all the ahadith regarding fiqh in one place to make it easier for the students of knowledge, and he wanted to participate in gaining all of the rewards of hadith and compiling hadith and teaching hadith and so on. Now, why is my screen frozen? For some reason my screen is frozen. I can use this pen. Okay, the pen works, alhamdulillah. And about the book, he wrote the book at a very young age, and then he kept changing and adding to it as time went by. So he showed it to one of his teachers, Imam Ahmad. Khatib Baghdadi says, he showed the book to Imam Ahmad, and Imam Ahmad found it to be good. Wastahsana, he found it to be good. He saw it to be good. Al-Khattabi, he says the book by Abu Dawud is a noble book, and there has not been written a book in the science of the religion like it. It has been given acceptance by all of the people. It became a distinguishing book between the different sects of the scholars according to different schools of thought. This is what the people of Iraq, Egypt, Morocco based their fiqh upon, and many other of the different cities. There are many explanations of it. There's Ma'alim al-Sunan by Al-Khattabi, a very good explanation. Sharh Sunan Abi Dawud by Ibn Ruslan, which is voluminous. Mirqat al-Saud by Suyuti, Fath al-Wadud by Sindi, Awn al-Ma'bud. This is the main one by Shams al-Haq al-Azim al-Abadi. There's Tahdhib al-Sunan by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah as well. But Ibn al-Qayyim basically summarized and he was doing footnotes. He was explaining it, but I don't think he finished it. But he didn't finish it. He didn't finish it. No. That's regarding Sunan Abi Dawud. Right? Now we're not going to go into too much. Like I said, the more detail is in the other course. Right now, you just need to know the main points. What's Sunan At-Tirmidhi? Now, what's the name of the book? Al-Mubarak Furi. Mubarak, is it Furi or Puri? That's Furi, Mubarak. It is. Let me have a double check. Is Mubarak Furi or Mubarak Furi? The book's upstairs, so let's quickly check here. Mubarak Furi now, why is it? Why have I got? Right, for some reason, I'm not able to change it. What's happened? Because it's not working for some reason. I'll change it later. It's Mubarak Furi. Okay. He mentioned in his explanation that it has become famous as Jami' At-Tirmidhi. And it's also known as Jami' Sahih and Sunan At-Tirmidhi. What seems to be more correct is that it is, it's called Sunan because it comes under the 4 Sunan. However, it's more precise to call it Jami'. Why? Because it comes under the meaning of Jami' that we explained before, that not only does he have a hadith regarding fiqh, but he also has the other ones as well. So the name is actually Al-Jami' Al-Mukhtasar min As-Sunan An Rasulillah. It says, that doesn't seem correct. 1 second. الجامع المختصر من السنن عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن take off the R رسول الله عن رسول الله. I'll change that as well. I would have changed it now, but I don't know, it's not working for me. عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ومعرفة الصحيح والمعلول وما عليه العمل. So al-jami', we know what that means. Al-mukhtasar, we know what that means, summarized. Min as-sunan, from the sunan. An Rasulillah, upon the messenger of Allah, regarding the messenger of Allah. Wa ma'rifat as-sahih wal-ma'lul, and to know the sahih, the authentic, and ma'lul, that which has the hidden defects. In other words, that which is weak. Wa ma alayhi al-amal, and what the action is upon. And this is one very good thing regarding Jami' Tirmidhi, is at the end of each chapter he would mention who acts upon this hadith from the fuqaha. So, Allah barik rahimahullah, it's like a miza for his book. Why did he author the book? He mentions it himself. He says, so verily we have only done this in this book from the statements of the jurists and fuqaha and the hidden defects of hadith. He would comment on the hidden defects because we were asked about it and we didn't do it for a long time. Therefore, we did it due to what we hoped in regards to benefiting the people, because we found that more than one of the imams burdened themselves with authoring a book in that which had not been authored before, and from them Hisham ibn Ihsan, Abdul Malik ibn Abdul Aziz, and he mentions a number of scholars, Ibn Jurayj, Sa'id ibn Urwa, Malik ibn Anas, Hamad ibn Salama, Abdullah Mubarak, Yahya ibn Zakaria. That's not a typo. Yahya ibn Zakaria, 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 Yah Yahya ibn Zakaria. So, help. Waki' ibn Jarrah, Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi, and other than them from the people of knowledge and virtue, and Allah has placed a lot of benefit in them, so we hope with that the great reward from Allah due to what Allah allows the Muslims to benefit from, as they are the role models for us in what we have authored. So he basically wrote it because a lot of people asked him to, and he wanted the rewards just like the Imams before him wrote. So a bit about the book. He would, similar to Sunan, so it's ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. A lot of the time the chapter headings are the same as the hadith. In each chapter, he would only mention a couple of hadith. He wouldn't mention too much. And he would give the ruling on the hadith as well. He would talk about the hidden defects of the hadith. He would do another thing. He would say, وَفِي الْبَابِ. And in the chapter, i.e., he would mention a couple of hadith, and later on he would say, وَفِي الْبَابِ. And in this chapter, i.e., regarding this topic that we are talking about, and he'll mention other companions, i.e., he will indicate towards other ahadith which are in this chapter. So he's not placed it in his book, but he's indicated towards them, seeing that, look, there's other ahadith as well. وَفِي الْبَابِ عَنِ أبي هريرة وعائشة and so on, رضي الله عنه. And then he would also mention وَمَا عَلَيْهِ الْعَمَلِ, who would act upon it as well from the fuqaha. The last book in his book is the book of Ilal, book of hidden defects. That's very good. Ibn Rajab, he has an explanation of it. Sharh al-Ilal at-Tirmidhi. Sharh al-Ilal at-Tirmidhi. The explanation of the book of Ilal by Imam at-Tirmidhi, which is very, very beneficial for anyone who wants to, and very important for anybody who wants to specialize in or learn about the science of al-Ilal, hidden defects. In his book, there are 3,956 hadith. In his book, there are 3,956 hadith, 51 books, and 2,231 chapters. 2,231 chapters. I didn't mention how many hadith there are in Abu Dawood, right? I add this in for Abu Dawood. As Abu Dawood says himself, he says 4,800 hadith. 4,800 hadith. Right? And some ulama have counted a bit higher. Some ulama have counted 5,274. And he says himself 4,800. Also at that time it was more difficult to count, so maybe he was rounding by saying 4,800. But some ulama have counted 5,274. That is Abu Dawood. Back to at-Tirmidhi. Now some scholars say that it's more authentic than at-Tirmidhi. Imam al-Zahabi, he says, the reason the level of at-Tirmidhi is after Abu Dawood is because he narrated the hadith of Muslim and Al-Kalbi and people like them. So they say because he narrated from a couple of people who are considered very weak, that's why the level of Tirmidhi comes after Abu Dawood. Imam Tirmidhi, he himself says, I authored this book and I showed it to the scholars of Hijaz, Iraq and Khurasan, and they became happy with it. And whoever has the book in the house, then it is as though the Prophet ﷺ is speaking in the house. He says, I authored this book and I showed it to the scholars of Hijaz, Iraq and Khurasan, and they became happy with it. And whoever has the book in the house, then it is as though the Prophet ﷺ is speaking in his house. So Imam al-Tirmidhi, how many hadith? 3,956. 3,956. And 51 books and 2,231 chapters. Imam al-Zahabi really praises the book and he says, in the Jami' is beneficial knowledge. In the Jami' is beneficial knowledge, bountiful benefits, the main issues, and it is one of the foundations of Islam. And it is one of the foundations of Islam. And if it wasn't for the few criticized hadith, some of them are fabricated, and majority of those criticized are in virtues. Meaning those hadith which are criticized, it's in the chapter of virtues, it's not in the chapter of rulings. But he's saying, if it wasn't for those hadith, then his book would have been, maybe even higher and given precedence over Abu Dawud. But Abu Dawud given precedence maybe over the way he ordered the book and the fawaid in there. Now there are many explanations. In fact, Al-Mubarak Furi, he says, know that Jami' al-Tirmidhi has many explanations, footnotes, summaries, and mustakhrajat. Know that Jami' al-Tirmidhi has many explanations, footnotes, summaries, and mustakhrajat. Mustakhrajat we'll get to, inshallah. These are two explanations. You have Aridat al-Ahwazi, which is Sharh Sunan al-Tirmidhi by Ibn al-Arabi. And we have Tuhfatu al-Ahwazi. Tuhfatu al-Ahwazi is the main one, inshallah. I'll make it bold later when I can. Inshallah, for some reason I can't do it now. Let me find. No, it's not doing it. But I'll make it bold, inshallah. And there is some footnotes by Imam As-Suyuti as well. He's got some footnotes on it as well. Right, now we move on to Sunan An-Nasa'i. Now Sunan An-Nasa'i, right? There are two names of his book. Al-Mujtaba is one name that he's given. And this is the most famous name. This is the name that Imam Imam An-Nasa'i chose. Right? And another one is called Sunan As-Sughra. As-Sunan As-Sughra. Okay? Now, the first one, Mujtaba means chosen. So it's important to know before I explain the meaning of the names. Imam An-Nasa'i had two books called Sunan. Imam An-Nasa'i had two books known as As-Sunan. The other one is known as As-Sunan Al-Kubra, the big Sunan. Right? And Al-Mujtaba or Sunan Al-Sughra is basically a summary of that he wrote himself. So the one which is famous, when we say Sunan Abi Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, is the smaller one, the summary. So one name is Al-Mujtaba, because Mujtaba means to be chosen, similar to Mustafa, right? So it's given that name because he chose a hadith from the big one, and he chose certain ones to place in the smaller one. The other name is As-Sunan As-Sughra. As-Sughra means small, from the word Saghir. And this makes sense. If the other one is known as Kubara, as big, from the word Kabir, and this one is known as Saghir, Sughra, smaller one. So he's got a bigger one, he's got a smaller one. Okay? So he's got two. He's got Sunan Al-Kubra, but the one we're referring to is Sunan Al-Sughra or Al-Mujtaba. So when he says Sunan An-Nasa'i, he's referring to the smaller one. Now, somebody may ask that, why has he got two? There's going to be a story which we're going to mention right now, inshallah, which is we're going to talk about here about the book. Now, when Imam An-Nasa'i, he finished writing As-Sunan Al-Kubra, he was traveling from Egypt. So when he finished writing As-Sunan Al-Kubra, he was traveling back from Egypt, and he passed by Palestine. And in Palestine, there was a village called Ramlah. There was a village called Ramlah. Now, when he went to that village, the Amir of that village asked him a question. And he said, are all the ahadith in there authentic? Are all of the ahadith in there authentic? So Imam An-Nasa'i said no. He said no. So he said, the Amir said to Imam An-Nasa'i, فَاكْتُبْ لَنَا مِنْهُ الصَّحِيحِ. Write to us from it the authentic. We just want the authentic ones. So then he wrote Al-Mujtaba. So he chose the authentic narration and placed it in Al-Mujtaba. Now obviously not everything in there is 100% authentic, but it is more authentic than some of the other books which we are going to as we'll mention inshallah. Hence why it's from the main books, right? It's not everything 100% authentic, but a lot of it is authentic, inshallah. Now you have an issue here, okay? You have an issue here, which is some ulama differ, and they say, okay, Sunan al-Kubra is by Imam An-Nasa'i. However, the Mujtaba or Sunan al-Sughra, was that done by Imam An-Nasa'i or was it done by one of his students? There are two opinions. The opinion of the majority of the scholars of Hadith, and from them Ibn al-Athir, and Ibn Kathir, and Al-Iraqi, and As-Sakhawi, and other than them, they say it was Imam An-Nasa'i who did it. It was Imam An-Nasa'i who summarized it himself. But then there are some scholars, like Imam al-Dhahabi, right? And others, they said no, his student did it. His student did the summary. And the name of his student is Ibn Sunni. Abu Bakr ibn as-Sunni. Abu Bakr ibn as-Sunni. Now, but what is more correct is that it was done by Imam An-Nasa'i, rahimahullah. We have a few statements here. An-Nasa'i, he said, when I made firm intention to gather the book As-Sunan, I prayed istikhara regarding narrating upon certain teachers whom I had doubt about in my heart. So the choice ended up being that I leave them and had high chains of narration, but left them due to the narrators. Meaning he had high chains of narration, but he left them because he had a bit of shak, a bit of doubt in the narrators, so he left those narrators. So we talk about the story of how he chose the authentic one, or he tried to choose that which is most authentic. Look at Ibn Rajab, he says Ibn Rajab prefers An-Nasa'i over Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi in terms of authenticity. And Ibn Hajar, he says, generally the book of An-Nasa'i is lesser book after the Sahihain in terms of weak hadith and men that have been criticized. So from the Sunan, the ulama say that this is the most authentic Sunan from them. Now, how many hadith are there? There are 5,758 hadith. 5,758 hadith. What are some of the explanations? Here we have a few explanations over here. We have Zahr al-Ruba ala Mujtaba by Imam al-Suyuti. And we have Hashiyat al-Sindi. Hashiyat al-Sindi ala Sunan al-Nasa'i by Abu Hassan Nuruddin al-Sindi, which is very good. But it's more footnotes, to be honest. And yeah, Sharh of Nasa'i by Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Adam al-Ethiopi. Now I've wrote Sharh al-Nasa'i, the actual name, which I've not put, I've put like a nickname. The actual name, and this is a very, very good. This is the one that who did the volume, I think 45 volumes for Sahih Muslim. This one's 40 volumes. The actual name, which I will change later on, inshallah, but I'll give you the name. It's called Dhakhiratul Uqba. Dhakhiratul Uqba. في شرح المجتبى. ذخيرة العقبة في شرح المجتبى. No. So the two, you can get Hashiyat al-Sindi, which is good, because Hashiyat al-Sindi, the footnotes, it's not the biggest, and he gives you what the student needs in terms of explaining, giving, how to correctly pronounce some words, explaining some of the hard words, doing i'rab of some of the words. just footnotes, upon the main things that a student of knowledge needs. If you want to go in depth, then obviously, Muhammad Ali ibn Adam al-Ethiopi, his explanation would be the most detailed. Now, finally, we move on to Sunan ibn Majah. Now, Sunan ibn Majah, the name of the book is a Sunan, and he named that himself. And he authored the book. He didn't mention a reason for it, but what it seems to be is that he wanted to gather the hadith regarding fiqh and enter into the rewards that the muhaddithin would get from writing books. Now, Sunan ibn Majah wasn't actually part of, when you say 6 books of hadith, he wasn't actually part of it. And it was the Muwatta who was the 6th one. But then the Muwatta was taken out and given a later number, and Sunan ibn Majah was placed at number 6. And the first person to do that was Al-Hafiz Abu al-Fadl ibn Tahir al-Maqdisi. Al-Hafiz Abu al-Fadl ibn Tahir al-Maqdisi, whose name I think we mentioned in the beginning before talking about the 6 books of hadith. That's 507. Okay. There's 24. There are 4,341 hadith. 4,341 hadith. There's 37 books and 1,500 chapters. 37 books and 1,500 chapters. So he's got 4,341 hadith. Okay. Now, a lot of people, they want to always, they seem to think that Sunan ibn Majah is full of weaker hadith. It's not the case, right? Now, I'm going to mention how many there are, right? Now, a lot of the hadith in that overlap with the other books already. So from the 4,341 hadith, 3,002 can be found in the other 5 books. 3,002 can be found in the other 5 books, i.e. Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i. Which leaves us with 1,329. So there are an extra 1,329 hadith in here. Now, obviously, just because it's extra, the hadith which are already found in the other books, there still could be fawaid in terms of the sanad, maybe different people, or explains somebody who's ambiguous, or in the text by a certain wording, there still could be fawaid from there. But the extra ones are 1,329. From them, the ulama, they say that from the extra ones, 428 are authentic. 428 are authentic, and 199 are hasan. 199 are hasan. And 613 are weak. And 613 are weak. If you guys quickly do maths, what's 428 plus 199 plus 613? What's that? 428 plus 199 plus 613. So 1240. 1240. That means you have how many left? 89 left, right? So if you do 1329, take away 1240, it's 89, yes. So the remainder, which are 89, they are extremely weak or lied or fabricated. Okay? But as you can see, not every hadith is weak. In the grand scheme of things, it's not all the hadith. But many of the hadith are found in the other books anyways. And Ibn Majah, the way he would do it is that he would rarely repeat a hadith. And when he would mention in his chapter, he would mention the most authentic hadith first, and then he would go down to the weaker ones. Okay? And the majority of the hadith which are weak, then they are in those issues which are non-fiqhi related. So there might be a few chapters here and there which are non-fiqhi. Even though Sunan mainly focuses on fiqh ones, there might be a few chapters here and there. That's where you will find most of the weak ones. Now, and then we come to the explanations of Sunan Ibn Majah. There's Hashiyah to As-Suyuti, footnotes by As-Suyuti and Ibn Majah. Again, As-Sindi, the same, I believe the same one as before. He has footnotes as well. I think it's upstairs. I actually have a print where, because the Hashiyah footnotes is only a bit, they've put the footnotes of Imam As-Suyuti and As-Sindi both in one print under Ibn Majah. So they have like a line, and I think it's firstly Imam As-Suyuti's, and another line under that is the footnotes of Imam As-Sindi. Number 4 is important. Injaz al-Haja. I've actually got it here. It's actually done from the ulama of Pakistan. I've got it here. This number of volumes. Number of volumes in total are the 9 volumes. Maybe 9 volumes. This one here. Injaz al-Haja. Sharh Sunan Ibn Majah. Okay. And this is done by Muhammad Ali Janbaz. Janbaz should be one word. Muhammad Ali Janbaz, from the most knowledgeable muhaddithin in Pakistan, who passed away. I think passed away recently, rahimahullah. It's not volume 1. It doesn't mention his death date here. No, I should see whether I have his death date over here. No, it doesn't mention his death date. But the book itself was only printed 10 years ago. So with that, alhamdulillah, we finished Sunan al-Arba'a. Okay. We can move on to the other books, inshallah. We don't need to take too long. Now we move on to the 4th century onwards. Okay, we finished the 3rd century. Now we have the 4th century, and there's other books in the 4th century. Now, obviously, as an introduction to the 4th century, which you can just add at the top, inshallah. Just a quick intro is that once the 3rd century had come to an end, this is where the golden era of writing hadith books came to an end as well. Meaning all of the ahadith had been written by now. Therefore, anything new was based upon the new ahadith, based upon the previous ahadith and taken from there, and just works upon them. And otherwise, it'll be something fabricated or something unauthentic. Okay, so right, and also there were different types of books as well. Some were the same, like Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih ibn Hibban, but we got Mustadrakat, Mustakhrajat, and other types of new books. And subhanAllah, just knowing the types of books shows you the efforts of the ulama and how precise they were and how much work they did just to preserve hadith from all different angles. Now, we talked about Sahih books before. We talked about Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. After that, we mentioned Sahih ibn Khuzaymah and Sahih ibn Hibban. Then there was a Mustadrak of Hakim as well, which you could also add. What is Sahih ibn Khuzaymah? Now, just to give you perspective, Sahih ibn Khuzaymah passed away in the year 311. Okay, the other ulama, the scholars, everything about them is written. From these onwards, I didn't put anything regarding them in the footnotes. So I'll just mention their death dates, just so you have an idea. So he passed away in the year 311. And he's from, all of these scholars are big scholars, And there's so much that I can say regarding all of them, but I don't. In the other course I did, but in this course, we don't have time for all of that. I mean, for example, Imam Ibn Hibban said about Ibn Khuzaymah, because I think he was his student. He said, I have not seen upon the earth who has memorized the craft of the Sunan and memorize the authentic wording and its extra wordings, extra wordings that might be in other books that may not be authentic, until it is as though the Sunan is between his eyes, except for Ibn Khuzaymah. And things like that. All right, so these are big ulama, rahmahullah jami'ah. And even Ibn Khuzaymah, you know, they say that he authored nearly 140 books. Subhanallah. Al-Waqi' was the teacher of Imam Shafi'i. لا, you mean Ibn Khuzaymah? لا, Ibn Khuzaymah came later. نعم, it would have been him. It would have been him now. Okay. Now, Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Now, the books now do have their own names as well, but I'm not going to mention them. I've mentioned them in the other course. I'm not going to mention them here. Why? There's not really a need. You just need to know Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Because some of these names are long, like Ibn Hibban's is quite long. So that's why I'm not going to mention it. Like I said, the main point now is just to get you guys familiar. I just want you to be familiar with the books, inshallah. Okay. And some of the names have khilaf, so there's no need to go into all of that. Right. Ibn Khuzaymah, is everything in the authentic? No. But it's the most authentic out of all of the others after Bukhari and Muslim. Imam As-Suyuti, he says, Sahih ibn Khuzaymah is a higher level than Sahih ibn Hibban due to how strict he was in choosing hadith, until he would even prevent from authenticating it due to the lowest criticism in a chain. Now obviously it's different to Bukhari and Muslim, because Bukhari and Muslim, the whole ulama have ijma' upon it. The whole ummah has accepted it. That's why Al-Manawi, he says, the most authentic book after Bukhari and Muslim is Ibn Khuzaymah, then Ibn Hibban, and then Al-Hakim. So this is Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. Then we move on to Sahih Ibn Hibban. Now Sahih Ibn Hibban, what's happened there, is also a book of Sahih, and he was a great Imam as well. One thing about Sahih Ibn Hibban, he had his own way of ordering a book, and it's quite complicated as well. In simple terms, we can mention he split into 5 parts that he mentioned himself: commandments, prohibitions, what a person needs to know, then things which are permissible, and then the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. But even that, it's quite difficult to follow along. Okay, even in the title of his name is At-Taqsim wal-Anwa', splitting and different types, and it's very complicated. That's why Imam As-Suyuti said Ibn Hibban has innovated a way of authoring his book. Is everything authentic? No, right? We mentioned statement of Imam Suyuti previously. The most authentic is after Bukhari Muslim is Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, and then Ibn Hibban. Now we move on to Al-Hakim. Now Al-Hakim is known as the lowest of these 5, but his book is not called Sahih Al-Hakim. It's known as Mustadrak Al-Hakim. That's a very important word. What is Al-Mustadrak? Right? They are books which gather all of the ahadith which are upon the conditions of a certain book, but they are not in that book. They are upon the conditions of a certain book, but they are not in that book, right? It's frozen. Right. Let's continue reading. The complete name for Mustadrak, Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, is Mustadrak ala Sahihain. The whole name is it should be Al-Mustadrak ala Sahihain. Okay, which means the Mustadrak upon the 2 Sahihs, right? And so the author gets the conditions of Imam Bukhari and Muslim and goes to the other books and all of the other hadith in these books which fulfill the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, which are not in Bukhari and Muslim. These are the hadith which which have been gathered into this type of book. Basically, what Al-Hakim did is Mustadrak, he looked at Bukhari and Muslim. He looked at all of the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. And he said, any single hadith which is not in Bukhari or Muslim, and it's in the other books, but it fulfills the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, I'm going to gather them together. You see the idea behind it. Any hadith which is not in Bukhari and Muslim, but upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, I'm going to gather them in one place. Wouldn't his be the most authentic Bukhari and Muslim? Good. That shows that you've understood the concept, right? The issue is that he called it that was the idea, but he didn't basically fulfill it. All right. So what have the scholars said regarding Mustadrak of Imam al-Hakim? Okay. Now with this, I've written it all out because it's quite important to understand. Imam al-Hakim was a big scholar, big scholar. He said, many have praised it and many have criticized it also, as it falls in the third level, the lowest level, which is after Bukhari and Muslim, and Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, and Sahih ibn Hibban. And then it is Mustadrak al-Hakim. Abu Sa'id al-Malini, he said, I've read Mustadrak upon the two sheikhs, Bukhari and Muslim, which was authored by al-Hakim from the beginning and end. I didn't even find a single hadith upon their conditions. Imam al-Zahabi comments on this statement and says, this is arrogance and extremism till end. Basically, he didn't really fulfill the condition that he placed. So now this scholar, Abu Sa'id al-Malini, he said, I can't even find one hadith upon the conditions. Imam al-Zahabi says, look, that's extreme. We don't go to that extent. We say nothing is authentic. There are many hadiths which are upon the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. However, there are many which aren't as well. And that's why it comes to the lowest level, the third level after Bukhari and Muslim. However, there are many hadith which are not upon the conditions of the Imams and are weak. Now a question may arise. If Imam al-Hakim was known to be a great scholar, why did he make many mistakes? Why is he claiming these are hadith to be upon not even Sahih, but on the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, and they're not reaching the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim? He says, there are two reasons mentioned by two ulama, one by Ibn Hajar and one by Tahir al-Jazairi. Jazairi or Jazairi? Check. Right, al-Jazairi, yes, with a Ra, not with a Lam. So with a R, not with a L. So change that. Al-Jazairi. Okay, he said he wrote this book towards the end of his life. This is the first reason. Explanation is that a person older in age can sometimes cause heedlessness and be prone to making mistakes, as some of those hadith which he narrated in his book. When he was younger, he was extremely strict and wouldn't narrate those hadith. Meaning, when he was younger, he would be strict about those hadith and he wouldn't narrate it. When you get older, maybe you're more prone to making mistakes and being heedless about certain things. So he narrated certain things which he might not have narrated when he was in his prime. Okay. And then Ibn Hajar mentions the second reason, which is that he never revised the book. And the latter half, he was very hasty in finishing the book. So the first half, I think he did imla of the book. He taught it to his students. The second half, he just finished it quickly. And we can add the first part where he says he never revised the book. So obviously, when you write something, like right now, a lot of this I've not actually revised. As I'm reading it, yeah, I can see typos, right? Similarly, in hadith, he didn't get time to revise. Imam Malik in Muwatta, how many years did he write? Did it take him to work on Muwatta? 40 years. Bukhari was 16 years on Sahih Bukhari. So if he never revised it, obviously there's going to be a lot of mistakes. What's very important is this last line that I mentioned, which is Imam al-Dhahabi has, as a summary of this book, was also commenting on these hadith. And these are very important. I think it's called تعقبات Imam al-Dhahabi. The تعقبات يعني when Imam al-Dhahabi would comment and criticize the book. Basically, Imam al-Dhahabi, he goes through the ahadith, and if he remains silent upon a hadith, the ulama write, وَوَافَقَهُ الذَّهَبِي. Imam al-Dhahabi agreed with the ruling. Otherwise, Imam al-Dhahabi would comment and say, no, this is not upon the condition of Bukhari Muslim, rather it's like this. So if you want to study Al-Hakim, I would advise the print that has the commentary of Imam al-Dhahabi in terms of the authentication and so on. And a very good print that I have, which is still in one of the boxes, is by Darul Mayman. Darul Mayman, the publisher. They've added all the commentary of Imam al-Dhahabi, and also they've added some other ulama as well. So if you want to get the Mustadrak of al-Hakim, then I'd recommend getting the one which has the commentary of Imam al-Dhahabi, so you are more clued on when it comes to the authentication of these ahadith. So we basically finished with these 3 books, right? We've done the 4 Sunan, and we've done Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih ibn Hibban, and we've done Mustadrak of Imam al-Hakim. You guys have to learn all of these books, okay? I know it's a lot, inshallah. Yeah, it's known as تلخيص المستدرك by الذهبي. نعم. مع تعقبه في الأحاديث. مع تعقبه في الأحاديث. Right, now we come to another book which is known as شرح مشكل الآثار. شرح معاني الآثار. Could have put them two on the same page, to be honest. خير. Both of these books, right? شرح مشكل الآثار is authored by Imam al-Tahawi. By Imam al-Tahawi, the famous one who wrote Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah, who passed away in the year 321 after Hijrah. Passed away in the year 321 after Hijrah. And likewise, the next book, Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar, is also written by Imam al-Tahawi. But what is the difference between the two books? What is the difference between the two books? Right? I think I'll add both of these on the same page because it's not a big explanation. The difference is why is Sahih ibn Hibban not included in the 6 if it's most, even Sahih ibn Khuzaymah if it's the most authentic? Because not everything in there is authentic. And a lot of the time, specifically this one, I wouldn't know an answer, but generally, those 4, as well as the Sunan, not only are they really authentic, but the main rulings of the religion revolve around those. So most of the time, when you see a reference, you'll see one of the 6 books. That's what they're known as Al-Kutub al-Sitta, and maybe I'll add it. They're also known as Al-Usul al-Sitta. Al-Usul al-Sitta. Al-Usul al-Sitta, meaning the 6 foundations. Because the religion is basically built upon these 6. Some call it As-Sahih As-Sitta, the 6 authentic ones. Not all authentic, but they are very close to being authentic. And this is one reason why, like, you may ask, why did Imam Malik's book Muwatta get pushed down? Because most of the hadith which are in the Muwatta Imam Malik are in the 6 books of hadith. They are already there, so they instead of repetition, they just put it down. Obviously, there are some hadith that aren't in there, and obviously there's wordings and benefits which you get in Muwatta which aren't in there. And by the way, some ulama do differ in some of the ordering. What we mentioned is the most famous one, or it's acted upon. But some ulama, they'll put Tirmidhi before Abu Dawood, for example, or they'll do other things. So some ulama do differ in these things. Okay, what's the difference between Sharh Mushkil al-Athar and Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar? Sharh Mushkil al-Athar is Imam al-Tahawi, he gathers those ahadith which outwardly seem to be contradictory. Outwardly seem to be contradictory. And then he reconciles between them. One says halal, one says not halal. How does he gets them together and he answers them. And it's important to know in the religion that there's no contradiction in the religion. أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. Allah says in the Quran, do they not ponder over the Quran? If it was from other than Allah, then verily there would be many contradictions and differing in it. And so there's not any contradiction that we see, then it is a contradiction that is due to our deficiency in our knowledge. So Imam al-Tahawi, he gets them together and he answers that, okay, this is not contradictory, but rather we reconcile between them like this. So this is Sharh Mushkil al-Athar. What about Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar? Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar, again by Imam al-Tahawi. This is where he gathers all of the ahadith which aid the Hanafi madhab. He gathers those ahadith which aid the Hanafi madhab because Imam al-Tahawi was Hanafi. Because Imam al-Tahawi was Hanafi. And that's why even his Aqidah al-Tahawiyya, the Ahnaf accept it. For two reasons. Firstly, because the author is Hanafi. Secondly, there's some words where Imam al-Tahawi is very ambiguous, very general. So they, the Ahl Bid'ah from them, they interpret it in their own ways. But that's why it's very important to also master Aqidah Tahawiyya. So when you're giving da'wah to Ahl Bid'ah, you can do that by using this book, because they accept this book. Anyway, so what's the difference between Mushkil al-Athar and Ma'ani al-Athar? Mushkil al-Athar reconciles between seemingly contradictory ahadith, and Ma'ani al-Athar are those ahadith which aid the Hanafi madhab. I remember yesterday, I think I said the Umd al-Qari by al-Aini is a Hanafi explanation. I think instead of writing a Hanafi explanation, I'm not 100% sure, but he is Hanafi. Al-Aini is Hanafi. Al-Aini was Hanafi, and he's got a book in Hanafi fiqh. Is it Al-Hidayah? I'm forgetting which one. He's got one of the main books in Hanafi fiqh as well. So I'm guessing he would have aided the Hanafi madhab, but to call it a Hanafi explanation, I'm not 100% sure about that. So just, if you've written Hanafi explanation, I'm not 100% sure, maybe crossed out, and it's mentioned that he was Hanafi. No. So anyways, this is the difference between these two. Yeah. Now we move on to Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir. Let me have a look how many books are remaining, because if there's a lot of books remaining, let me see what I can do. Can we take all of these? Yeah, alhamdulillah, I think I've written most of them out. Books of Ahkam we can take tomorrow, or next lesson. But all these other books we can take inshallah. Okay, right. You guys have to bear with me then inshallah. Right, we have Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir by Al-Tabarani. These books, the plural being Al-Ma'ajim. Al-Tabarani has 3 books called Al-Mu'jam. 3 books called Al-Mu'jam. Mu'jam Al-Saghir, Saghir means small. Mu'jam Al-Awsat, middle. And Mu'jam Al-Kabir, which means big. What's the difference between these 3 books? Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir is ordered upon the names of the companions, and it begins with the 10 promised paradise, and then mentions the rest of the companions in alphabetical order. There are approximately 25,000 hadith. In other words, it's actually a musnad. It's a musnad, but he's not called it a musnad. He's called it a mu'jam. Okay. Al-Mu'jam al-Awsat is what he narrates from his teachers and not from the companions. So, and he approximately mentions 20,000 hadith. So Al-Mu'jam al-Awsat is where it doesn't look at the companion, it looks at his teachers, what he has heard from his teachers, and he mentions all of that. And Al-Mu'jam al-Saghir is similar to Al-Mu'jam al-Awsat, but it's a lot shorter and only mentions 1 hadith for each teacher. So he's got basically 2 types. Al-Kabir, 25,000 hadith regarding from the methodology of a Musnad. Al-Awsat and Al-Saghir is the hadith he's heard from his teachers, Al-Awsat is bigger. He has all the hadith he's done from his teachers. And Al-Saghir, the small one, is just one hadith that he's heard from his teachers. Okay. Kitab al-Sunan by Ad-Daraqutni. Ad-Daraqutni, a very important book as well. It's a Sunan. When we indicated what it's a Sunan, so obviously its chapters is ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. So it's similar to a Sunan like it is normally. And Khatib al-Baghdadi, he really praises this book. And he mentions how the author gave a lot of importance to the different schools of fiqh, the different madhahib. And they say that he actually narrated this book from memory, actually. What's this? They say that he narrated his book from memory. And even in there, he's got a part where he talks about al-ilal as well. And that is from the hidden defects. And it's from the main books in the ilal as well. And subhanAllah, they say that he did that from memory as well. He did imla from memory. So imagine if he did go back to his books, subhanAllah, how much knowledge would be in there. So that's Kitab al-Sunan by Ad-Daraqutni. It's basically a Sunan. Sunan al-Kubra by al-Bayhaqi. But I've not mentioned the death date, have I? Of the previous authors. So Al-Tahawi I mentioned. He passed away 321. Imam al-Tabarani passed away 360. Imam al-Tabarani passed away 360. Ad-Daraqutni passed away 385. 385 after Hijrah. And now we move on to Al-Bayhaqi, who passed away 458. 458 after Hijrah. Now, it's Sunan al-Kubra, it's a Sunan, right? So it's ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. Also, it is also ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. If you guys could just give me 1 minute, I'll be back. Now, so that's all it is basically a Sunan. And it's very important, a lot of fawaid in there as well. We move on now to mustakhrajat. Alhamdulillah, I've written this out for you. A mustakhraj is a book which, so it's similar to mustadrak, but it's a bit different. A mustakhraj is a book which collects the same hadith in a certain book, but with different chains of narration from the same author. E.g., the author takes a hadith that is mentioned in Bukhari or Muslim, and then he will come for that same hadith and find other chains of narration that go back to the author. So he gets a book, he gets a hadith, but Bukhari is narrating. Bukhari just, Muslim already mentions a lot of chains. Okay, maybe I'll take out the example of Muslim, but you could still do it upon Muslim, right? And whatever chain is not mentioned by Imam al-Bukhari in that book, but goes back to Imam al-Bukhari, which can be found maybe in other books and so on, and then he gets all of them and gathers all those other chains of narration for the same hadith. That's fine, inshallah. So what's the benefit of this? We mentioned 6 benefits. Number 1, sometimes in the different chains of narration, the wording is slightly different, although the hadith is the same, and this can have an effect on the meaning. Maybe there's a certain word that shows tartib, or one word, it can have an effect. Number 2, you learn more chains of narration for the same hadith. Number 3, it aids a person in grading the hadith, as all the chains of narration will be gathered together, therefore allowing a person to look into its grade of authenticity. You can work out the trustworthiness of the narrators, because you can look at, is it matching the other narrators? You can work out the ambiguous names in the chain of text. E.g., Ahmed said, Ahmed is not specified by full name or other chains. So other chains may mention the full name, and we can come to know which Ahmed it is. And number 6, a proof to refute those who attack Bukhari, and as he isn't the only one mentioning this hadith. It further strengthens the authenticity of what is in Bukhari, and obviously Sahih Muslim as well. Now we move on to the 5th and 6th century. Okay, now in the 5th and 6th century, other types of books came. So now there were some books that combined between the different books, right? So this is not an explanation of the 6 books of hadith, rather it is a combination of them. E.g., Al-Jami' Bayn al-Sahihayn. There are many books which are known as Al-Jami' Bayn al-Sahihayn, the comprehension between Bukhari and Muslim, the 2 Sahihs. Basically, they'll compile books together, which as one book which compiles the hadith which are Bukhari and Muslim. We have one by Humaydi, one by Al-Ishbili. Ishbili is a very famous one that people memorize for Bukhari and Muslim. And lately by Muhammad Fuad Abdul-Baqi, we have Lu'lu al-Marjan. Here, the 3rd one, Al-Jami' al-Usul li Ahadith al-Rasul. This is by Ibn al-Athir, right? I think he passed to 606. But Jami' al-Usul, he basically, for this, he combined between all those hadith which are in Al-Kutub As-Sittah, the 6 books of hadith. So that which is found in the 6 books of hadith, he basically compiled all of them into one book, and it's a very big book, but very beneficial at the same time. One thing. It's not here. Okay. Okay. Now we'll continue inshallah. Kutub al-Atraf, let's quickly read this. These are books which the author only mentions the beginning of the hadith. The Prophet said, no believers until I become more beloved. ... They won't mention the whole hadith. The name of these types of books is from the word taraf, which means the side of something. I.e., a bit of the hadith that is enough to show which hadith is being referred to, and then gather all of the chains for that hadith. Therefore, the clear objective of this type of book is the chains of narration and not the hadith itself. Some of these books are, and these are the names of the books. We have Kutub al-Zawaid. These are books which gather the hadith that are extra upon a certain book, i.e., e.g. extra hadith that Imam Bukhari has and Muslim doesn't. So you'll find these books, Zawaid al-Bukhari ala Muslim. The Zawaid, i.e. the extra hadith which are in Bukhari and not in Muslim. Just those hadith which are extra, put on the side. And these are some of those. Okay, obviously Bukhari and Muslim is like that, and sometimes the ulama do it for more than one book. These are known as Zawaid. Extra hadith in one book which aren't in another book. Kutub al-Mawdu'at, these are those hadith which are fabricated. Hadith which are fabricated, we talked about it. And Ibn al-Jawzi as well, al-Mawdu'at, Ibn al-Jawzi, in brackets you can see after that. This is has been highly criticized due to it having some big mistakes as hadith which are not fabricated are found in this book of fabrications. In fact, there's some hadith which Bukhari and Muslim he ended up putting in there. So you have to be careful in regards to that. Okay. Then we have the books of Tarajum al-Ruwah. Tarajum al-Ruwah are basically those books which gather all of the Tarajum in biographies. Ruwah is narrators. Basically talks about the narrators. Talks about their lives and talk about if they're trustworthy or not. And there are many big books. Tarikh al-Kabir by Imam al-Bukhari is a very big book. It's not even one hadith in Bukhari. No, nothing is big. No. So Tarikh al-Kabir, which is by Imam al-Bukhari, he authored the book alphabetically according to the names of the narrators, excluding beginning with the names that begin with Muhammad. He gave precedence to the names that start with Muhammad. He started with all those that start with Muhammad out of respect for the Prophet ﷺ. Then after that, it was in alphabetical order. We also have a Jarh wa Ta'adil by Imam Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Muhammad ibn Hatim al-Razi, where he followed the methodology of Imam Bukhari. And he would mention what the other ulama have said, and he would mention his own opinion as well. Then after that, we have the main book is Tahdhib al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal. Tahdhib al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal by Imam al-Mizzi. However, there's like a history behind it. Okay? Because firstly, there was Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. He came, who wrote Umta Ahkam. He wrote a book called Al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal. As you can see, this one. I've missed out Mizan al-I'tidal by Imam al-Zahabi. That's another book. But after that, I've done it in order for you. We have Al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal by Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Okay? He passed away in the year 600. Okay? Now, Al-Mizzi came along and he basically summarized and completed and changed and did a lot of work to it basically. And he had his book, Tahdhib al-Kamal. And this is like the main book if you want to go to narrators and find out about them. This is the main book that a person would go to. And then after him, Imam Ibn Hajar came along and he summarized it into 4 volumes. He titled it Tahdhib al-Tahdhib by Ibn Hajar. I've got it over here. Tahdhib al-Tahdhib. Right, in 4 volumes. Right, I've got the print by Muassasa al-Risala. Right, see here, Tahdhib al-Tahdhib in 4 volumes. And then he summarized this one, which is 4 volumes, into 1 volume, and he titled it Taqrib al-Tahdhib. I know it's a bit confusing, you learn a lot of books today. But this is 1 volume, again, by Muassasa al-Risala. But the books are written, alhamdulillah, and they're in order. So it'll be a lot more easier for you guys to follow along. So Al-Kamal came first by Abdul Ghani Muqtasi, then Al-Mizzi basically worked on it himself, and then Ibn Hajar had two, he summarized it, then he summarized the summary as well. Right, books on knowing the companions. If you want to learn about the companions, the life of the companions and so on, there are three books here: Al-Isti'ab by Ibn Abd al-Barr, and Usd al-Ghaba by Ibn al-Athir, and Ibn al-Athir 630. Ibn al-Athir al-Jazari. No, I think I said 606 before, right? Or was that different? That was a different one. That's fine. And then we have Al-Isabah fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba by Ibn Hajar. These are all voluminous books. These are voluminous books that talk about the companions. Then there's a fourth one. You've got a bullet point for the fourth one, which is you can add Sir A'lam al-Nubala. But obviously, Sir A'lam al-Nubala is not only for the companions; it's for all the scholars from the companions until the time of the author. But within there are in the biographies of the companions. Kutub al-Takhrij. Takhrij is basically studying the entirety of a hadith through deep research. Who narrated it, who authenticated it, who did studying the whole hadith and giving a ruling on the hadith. That's called books of Takhrij. And here are some of the books of Takhrij: Nasb al-Raya, Talkhis al-Habir, al-Mughni, and so on. And then we have Kutub al-Gharib. Gharib basically are the hard words, the words even the Arabs don't maybe use as much, and they need a bit of an explanation. And there are many books here. The main one is the one which is in bold, An-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith by Ibn al-Athir. Okay, now you guys have learned. Can I repeat the fourth one? Sir A'lam An-Nubala. Sir A'lam An-Nubala by Imam al-Zahabi. By Imam al-Zahabi. Sir A'lam An-Nubala by Imam al-Zahabi. Now, so alhamdulillah, you guys have learned a lot of books. A lot. I know it's a lot. Alhamdulillah, it's all written, most of it anyway, which makes it easier. You guys just need to try to learn what each type of name is referring to, and at least one. For example, the Kutub al-Gharib, just memorize An-Nihaya by Ibn al-Athir. Just learn one for each one and have a general idea, and you can always come back to this, inshallah. Next lesson, we'll go over books of Ahkam, and I think it's books of Mustalah al-Hadith. Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, Ilm al-Rijal now. Yeah. After that, yeah, Mustalah al-Hadith. And then I think, yeah, we finished an introduction of Hadith and everything. Then we just got a small introductions where we talk a bit about Imam An-Nawawi, and then we talk a bit about the book, and then we start the book, inshallah. So we should finish all of that tomorrow. As we will, next lesson, will you finish Imam Nawawi's? We will try to, inshallah. So I know it's a lot. Forgive me for going over time. Hamza, they're similar. They're similar now. Are there any other questions? Make sure you guys revise now. It's Thursday, you have until Tuesday. Now, revise with Allah. Tuesday, same time, 8:30, inshallah, 8:30. Right, I've got another lesson now, so we'll stop here. Subhanakallah. Tuesday and Thursdays, every Tuesday and Thursday. Right,